Alrighty, so what is the history and evolution of propaganda, and how does it affect your everyday life? So first off, this is not a conspiracy video, but there are some pretty important things here. So why is this important? First off, that is the whole point of my channel, by the way. Every single video, there's a purpose behind it, and it's to apply it to your everyday life. So knowing this is important to understand a few crucial points. So first off, governments never fully have your best interests at hand. And governments or authority figures aren't always right or know best. And the third is you are most likely filled with government propaganda and are completely unaware of it. Completely unaware of it, which I'll get into and you'll see exactly how this is true. There's so many things that are affecting your life that you think are your own ideas and there are not. And it's negatively affecting your life and your children's life, which I have made a video, by the way, on how it affects your children's life before. We'll get into that maybe eventually. And the fourth thing is being aware of this prevents you from being manipulated as easily. You must develop the ability to think critically. That's one of the things about my channel, the whole point of my channel. And the fifth thing is it shows patterns that repeat in history seems to always repeat itself. Now, even though current governments are moving in a direction of less power for the masses, meaning less of a democracy, in this case, the U.S. Supreme Court case of Citizens United in around 2010. If you don't know that, I made a video sort of about this as well. It's on how governments work and stuff. It's not a conspiracy video. This is just how they work. You can be aware of the situation you are in and you can act accordingly, which it'll help, by the way. It'll help. So what is the most effective disguised forms of propaganda today? So as we can see right here, I have 3 pictures. The first is culture. Yeah, that's right. Culture is actually a form of propaganda. The second is education. And the third is media. In this case, your phone, social media. Or, well, it's pretty crazy. This phone one is a lot crazier than you'd think. Yeah, so there are 3 main forms of propaganda today, which are incredibly effective and disguised under certain names, both of which, by the way, all of which actually are completely filled with bullshit or information that does not have your best interest at mind. That is the main thing about propaganda, actually. I would, in this case, mostly define propaganda as information that does not have your best interest in mind, and that it is also untrue as well, or it can be untrue. So the first one is culture and lifestyle, and how culture is different. So for instance, every culture is different, and certain aspects of culture are just a part of lifestyle. In this case, being independent at 18, as one example. College equals success. Work hard, then retire. Beauty and fitness culture. Oof, God, that one's bad. Experts say, I mean, there is so much bullshit, it's crazy. My channel covers all of this. Once again, go check out my playlist if you're interested. The second form of propaganda is school. So modern public or private education, which teaches a decent amount of helpful information, but how it's taught is quite bad. So for instance, being literate is actually helpful. Being able to do math is helpful. History and science can also be helpful as well. Basic important things that are all valuable, but how they are taught and some of the information of what is taught is very bad, which will be explained why in future slides. And the third is social media. This one is honestly comical. This one's very funny. The reason is because a huge portion of people just use it to spread propaganda without even realizing this. So one example could be like hashtag boss babe, hashtag grind culture, quote unquote, don't question the experts, outrage sharing, which Asmongold gets. If you don't know Asmongold, he's a streamer. He gets so many people doing outrage sharing, which basically they're just taking videos of him out of context and hoping to get him in trouble in some way. These are just some examples, but it's very, very funny. So when and how did propaganda start? So first off, propaganda, sadly, it started with religion and abusing the importance of religion, which if you don't know the importance of religion, go check out my video on why religion is essential to everybody. That's right, it includes you. You do believe, you worship something, but the thing is, sometimes it's not always a good thing. and it puts you in a certain direction, and sort of like a vector force in physics. I'm not going to get into that, but once again, go check out the video. It's pretty good. Funnily enough, this is really comical. I'm going to say this right now. Propaganda is actually the origin of civilization itself. So right here we have a picture of Sid Meier's Civilization. The origin of civilization is literally propaganda. And it first starts off before the 1500s, where government used religion and symbolism to legitimize power. Back then, church and state were together very, very often, and pharaohs and kings would claim to be gods or chosen by the gods, right? So as we can see right here, we have our picture of an Egyptian pharaoh. So in this case, the ancient cult leader is also worshipped as a god, and we have our modern cult leader worshipped as a god called Charles Manson, who had this as well. So it's sort of funny. Yeah, so what's interesting about this, and honestly laughable, is that this is the exact same thing of what cults do today. Often led by one person, and they claim that they have a special spiritual connection in this case, or maybe they promise salvation or purpose or enlightenment in some instance. And the core tactic is identical to ancient leaders. Establish unquestionable authority through divine or moral superiority. It's sort of funny because this moral superiority is actually what we see very often, especially in woke culture. Oh my god, wokeness is a different kind of religion. It's a sick religion. But regardless, it's sort of funny to think that civilization started from cult leaders, which we look at today as crazy, but that's actually how civilization started. So how exactly did propaganda become easier to spread? The printing press revolution, 1400s, 1700s, let rulers, churches, religious figures in this case, revolutionaries, all of them spread ideas faster than ever before. And before then, propaganda was only spread through verbal speech and word of mouth, especially in temples, like the religious context. But now it could be spread into the hands of the public. Now, this actually is very interesting. This is what gave value to literacy, as a majority of ancient civilizations' populations pre-1400 AD were completely illiterate, by the way, and unable to read. I'm talking about 1 to 5% literacy rate, like it was extremely low. But now becoming literate had extreme value. And if government wishes to spread its propaganda, well, they're going to have to start having more people read, right? And lo and behold, literacy rates skyrocketed, getting up to 10 to 15% higher in the Middle Ages. So this is very, very high, by the way. This is a skyrocket just from the printing press itself. So as we can see right here, this is the printing press. And this is a picture. It just says the word literacy. That's right. Becoming literate became far more important and valuable, especially for the government, actually, because it would help them spread propaganda. And how did propaganda evolve into what we call school today? So this is the next step of history. School originates in Prussia. I have made a little bit of a video on this before, but I will reiterate on how the history of school basically started. So school originates in Prussia since after the Napoleonic Wars. Prussia wanted a population which was three things: obedient, literate enough, basically remember the printing press like I've mentioned before, and patriotic and loyal to national identity. Now the thing is, Horace Mann, this guy right here on the right, senator of Massachusetts in 1836, comes along to Prussia and he's like, oh my god, this is actually incredibly effective. So what he does is he brings the idea to the US and imports it into the 1830s for the sake of encouraging patriots. Now this is where the quote, "the road to hell is paved with good intentions," is exactly what happens here. Because education shifts from creating patriots, which is what Horace Mann's idea was, to making efficient and obedient factory workers in the 1900s. Since the Industrial Revolution and huge tycoons like Rockefellers and others influenced it a lot, by the way. They put a lot of money into it. Now, while being literate is quite helpful for many other aspects of life, especially in today, the origin and continuation of school today still mostly serves the purpose of propaganda, sadly. And it's worse than you think, especially in the 1900s. So how exactly did propaganda evolve into school today? Part 2. This one's pretty crazy. So the road to hell, once again, is paved with good intentions. That's right, it doesn't end. So the birth of psychology, in this case, starts around 1870, and John B. Watson and Edward Thorndike argued that human beings can be trained like animals through repetition, reward, and punishment. And what better place to start than school, by the way? What better place to test than school? Now, John Dewey wanted democracy to function, but Mr. John Dewey also rejected the idea of intellectual freedom. So he thought schools should mold social behavior as well, which is why schools attempt, anyways, to mold social behavior. But I would say wokeness has lingered its way in there, which is another kind of religion, a sick religion. But regardless, afterwards, Edward Bernays, the father of modern propaganda, this guy right here, applied psychoanalysis to mass behavior, calling it public relations, or PR. Now, governments and big companies, by the way, realize the same kinds of principles can be used to condition the masses, and schools were the early testing grounds, that's right, for this kind of behavior. In this case, stimulus leads to emotional response, which leads to desired behavior. Now, this is why school systems are set up in certain ways, which we'll get into. It parallels with the Industrial Revolution. Good students became those who followed instructions, sat still, and repeated information accurately. It's exactly what a good student is today. So what are other huge innovations in the evolution of propaganda? There's a lot of them, actually. But there's a couple of notable advancements. So 1700s to today, propaganda also started to become disguised as culture and as lifestyle, especially post-World War II, where the economy needed constant labor mobility and consumer spending, as that is the only way to continue the suburban bubble, which, as we can see right here, I made a video on that, by the way. If you're interested, go check that out. It's it's costing you trillions of dollars. It's costing probably like 2.5 to $3 trillion. It's insane yearly, which is ridiculous. 1900s to 1980s is when radio and television allowed for mass media and incredibly effective propaganda, which still affects boomers today, by the way. If we don't know, if CNN and Fox are just great examples. And the American dream, where you have to be asleep in order to believe it, as George Carlin says. That's right. And it's because the American dream doesn't really exist. It's, once again, it's propaganda. It's bullshit. In 2010 to today, propaganda became digital, and people are just spreading, quote unquote, spreading their beliefs or voicing their own, quote unquote, opinion, when in actually a majority of these cases, this was never their own belief or opinion in the first place. It was just somebody else's. This is, by the way, legit Zuko from Avatar all over again. I don't know if you know Zuko's story, but basically Zuko's trying to live for his father and what his father desires and what his father wants, right? And he's trying to accomplish what his father wants, thinking that it's actually what he wants. And Iroh, Zuko's, we'll call him the person who was traveling with him along the way the entire time, and maybe we can call it a mentor as well, basically is trying to tell Zuko the entire time, it's time to go your own way, time to realize what do you want, not what your dad wants, because this was never Zuko's desire. This was his dad's desire. And it's a really good story, honestly. That's one of the things I like about fiction. They can get some pretty important points across. So how exactly is school an effective machine of propaganda today? So teacher hierarchy. First off, one person is always right. Students are always the subordinates. And if you challenge the teacher, that equals disrespect. I did this, by the way, before. My example is with my biochemistry professor in college. It's even worse in college. Sometimes you're lucky and you have a good teacher. So I'll just explain my story real quick with the biochemistry professor. If you don't know my channel, I have talked a lot about carnivore before and explaining the biochemistry behind carnivore and why it's actually very beneficial, right? And why it's healthy and stuff. And my biochemistry professor said something which was, once again, complete bullshit. It's basically along the lines of polyunsaturated fats are healthy for the heart, right? This is exactly the opposite, by the way. Polyunsaturated fats are not healthy for the heart. It's saturated fats. But I called him out for it in class, right? And he calls me over after class the professor basically tells me after class, and he says, "Don't ever interrupt class again like that." Basically, it was what I interpreted as him being insecure and sort of not really liking that I called him out on this in some sense. And he says, "Don't do that in class again, or if you do, I'm gonna have to bring it up to the higher ups, right?" And I was looking at this, I was like, "Wow, this guy got that butthurt by it, right?" So in some sense, this is sort of how teachers will, I guess you could say, demonstrate their sort of authority. They want to feel that sort of authoritative position, right? It's sick sometimes. The fact that this is happening with a scientist too, by the way. This should never happen with a scientist.
Rule number one in this classroom: you don't call me Ms. Allen. You don't call me professor. I have a PhD. That's a doctor of philosophy, PhD, Dr. Allen. Thank you very much. Don't forget.
But regardless, the second thing is the reward-punish model from the 1900s and why so many kids feel learned helplessness today. Veritasium made a very good video on learned helplessness. You should go check that out if you're interested. That's right. I recommend other videos outside of my own because if they're really good, I recommend you go check that out. In this case, obedience replaces curiosity. This is a very sad thing. As we can see right here, our picture is the learned helplessness barrier. So everybody here, all they have to do is walk around the wall. But the problem is because of learned helplessness, they don't actually know how to do this. And this is how so many kids feel today, by the way, because they're always being told what to do. And what does this guy say right here? He says, "Let's wait here till they tell us what to do. Otherwise, we might get in trouble." You see what I mean? They're supposed to be getting all the way over here, and they have to listen to what they say. In this case, they could be like the authoritative figure doing the governing or whatever, the power system, which I've made a video on. I've made a video on how power systems work. Anyways, that's besides the point. Another thing of how school is an effective propaganda machine: standardized testing. It's all about memorization, not reasoning. And you can see right here, this picture. What did you learn at school today? And you can see the girl basically just saying the multiple choice answers, right? Sort of funny. Because it's true, there's not really much reasoning that occurs. Low grades equals bad, and internalized anxiety equals control. So low grades basically makes you feel bad, and the internalized anxiety that these low grades make the kids feel equals control over them, because that gives power basically over that kid. In some sense, you have to improve your grade, right? Oh, you have to improve your grades and stuff. It's just, it's complete bullshit. Anyways, afterwards is critical race theory, or DEI, equality of outcome rather than equality of opportunity. So your opportunity is defined by your race. This is literally racist. This is crazy. But this is also being taught in schools today. This is, once again, propaganda. Does not have your best interest in mind, and is also not true. It's completely full shit. Honestly, there are so many poor ideologies or ideas that somehow just find their way into the education system in some way or another. Sometimes it's corporate, sometimes it's governmental, sometimes it's academia, and some quote-unquote enlightenment thinker thinking, "Oh my god, this is a great thing," right? Some philosophical guy comes about and says, "Oh, this is great philosophy," and somehow this just gets incorporated in there. Crazy shit. So how exactly does current lifestyle and culture also today just make propaganda? How is it also propaganda? So there's a lot of these crazy ones. Corporate conglomerates promoting vegetables are healthy studies, by the way, which are so poorly conducted, let alone considering that science itself, it's messed up. Kicking out the kid at 18 in the name of independence, which helps boost stonks. Started in the 1950s. Also made a video on this as well. This, by the way, this is not like this is just propaganda. All of these are propaganda. This is all complete bullshit. And this is how current lifestyle and culture just become propaganda, sadly. Once again, culture is basically a form of propaganda, in my view. College equals success, like, as an example, or work hard and then retire. So basically, this reinforces labor compliance, even when in practice it's quite clear it doesn't work because, lo and behold, some people are working 3 jobs just to stay afloat. I mean, you can get so many people on YouTube talking about this, let alone people in real life that I know of who have this exact thing. They have to work 3 jobs just to stay afloat, just to pay for the rent and food and shit because of how bad the cost of living is getting. I mean, once again, propaganda. Beauty, cosmetics for women specifically, and fitness, gym for men culture, both of which are really unhealthy. So first off, if you do not know the history of makeup and cosmetics and how that affected women, it is sickening. Like, it is disgusting. Makeups and the history of that is horrifying. I don't think that this is healthy at all. So I really don't think this is healthy at all. And working out, I don't think is healthy at all. I also made a video on that as well. Working out is just adapting to the environment and causing tissue remodeling to occur, which I don't necessarily find that super healthy. This is just adapting to the environment. The history of makeup, though, if you're really interested, it's also makeup throughout history, especially in the 19 or 1800s, if I remember correctly, like radium makeup, that was really bad. That was really, really bad. Like, the pictures that you could see of women's faces and how they would deteriorate because of radium makeup is like, oh my god. Makeup itself is just not healthy. Experts say, this could be literally anything, by the way, health related, in the medical sector. Recent censorship happened there in 2020-ish, by the way, if you can catch my drift. Could even be related to the economy or the stock market. It doesn't really matter. Experts say whatever, right? So as we can see right here, our pictures is relax, everyone. Government health experts are here. And if we look at all these government health experts, let's see how many of them look healthy. This person clearly doesn't look too healthy. Does not look too well. This isn't a health expert. This is the mayor, if I remember, of Chicago. Not really too healthy. All these people don't really look too healthy. So how could somebody like this be a health expert, right? Yeah, that sort of thing. Also, feminism telling women that they don't need no men, or men and women are equal, as an example. This only promotes demographic implosion, as well as spreading what is complete lies, by the way. Females and males are fundamentally different, both physically and mentally. Check out my entire relationship playlist if you're interested in learning how sexes work and how you can help yourself get a relationship, because it also explains that there. So what can you do knowing all of this information? At the very least, first off, be aware of history. It repeats itself nonstop. And as we can see right here, history repeats itself, but in such cunning disguise that we never detect the resemblance until the damage is done. This happens very, very, very often, and this could be in many ways. It could be in genocides, it could be in the stock market, you name it, okay? Doesn't really matter. It repeats itself on repeat. Now, if you do not believe what I say to be true, then at the very least, first off, either do your own research, or better yet, experiment and try it out yourself to see if it really is or isn't true. So as you can see right here, this is a picture of some guy experimenting on himself, right? And one thing on experimenting on yourself, one thing, is you have to realize that there's going to be challenges and you're going to have to step outside your comfort zone because of it. Now, if you want to know the details behind each of these subjects, I have covered all of them in my playlist. And my playlist contain every subject that I've mentioned to be propaganda. It could be feminism, it could be relationships, it could be kicking out the kid at 18, demographic implosion, it could be the suburban bubble, it could be intelligence, health. It doesn't really matter, especially health, by the way, because I did this whole, that's originally what my channel was all about. It was carnivore stuff, but yeah, I don't really think that's all it should be. Anyways, doesn't really matter what it is. Once again, go check out all my playlist. Anyways, thanks for watching. I hope you guys learned something valuable. If you did, please let me know down in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, comment down below. It really does help the channel grow. If you're interested in any videos, once again, let me know down in the comments below. Yeah, plan on making a lot of videos. So once again, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.